Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I am Reverend Elder Rich Hendricks, and I'm coming to you from the Quad Cities, Davenport, Iowa, right on the Mississippi River bordering Illinois. And I bring you greetings from the moderator and the Council of Elders and the governing board. And just pleased to be able to offer this today. And I'm going to open us with a word of prayer. Let us pray. O Lord God of many names, known in so many ways, there are just as many ways to tell your story. And so we ask God that in this time when we think about the song, Go Tell It on the Mountain, we ask that you would give us more tools, more creative ways to be able to tell your story, the story of our MCC churches, God, in a way that brings others to us. Bless this meeting, God, as we learn and grow together. We ask it in Jesus' name and by the power of your Holy Spirit. Amen. And I'm going to introduce you to Reverend James Hartman. Take it away, James.
Hello, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you, Rich, for making this possible, and you, Dexter, for supporting us from staff this evening. My name is James Hartman. I'm the pastor of MCC Baton Rouge, Louisiana, USA. I also have a 30-plus year background in journalism and media relations, which is how I come to be the external communications and crisis communications point person for our denomination. And Elder Rich and I have talked considerably in the last few months about the importance and Dexter and I have actually for several years, the importance of trying to bring that networking down to the local church level, because we can be so much stronger in our outreach through the media if we're all communicating and understanding how we go about doing that in the most effective ways. So that's what brings us here tonight. And you please know that I am not here to lecture you. This is an interaction. So if you have a comment or a question or a suggestion, please don't hesitate to holler, and I'd be happy to address that. Also, I will warn you, I share a lot of war stories from my diverse and long career. So because they illustrate points. So bear with me if I go off on those tangents, but they do come back to what's relevant for MCC and our churches. So could we have the first slide, please, Dexter? There we go. The first rule, if you will, of trying to get media attention, which in public relations parlance we call earned media, different from paid media or advertising, because we actually work to get the attention of the media, and it's free other than the effort and sweat that we put into it. But being relevant is essential to getting that earned media attention. And we can talk about what that means in greater detail, but uh, for example, it would be utterly pointless for me to issue a press release today from Baton Rouge, from our church here, about what's going on in Minneapolis, and offer me to give commentary locally about that. Because one, we've already sounded off on that as a denomination and had great success with that, but that's also not so relevant to what's happening in my news market right now. So it's incumbent on each of us to be attuned to not only global and national events and affairs, but what's happening locally. And we'll talk more about this in a minute, that we can tie into our ministries locally and globally and make some noise with that, if you will, and get some attention. And right now, with everything going on in the world, it's increasingly easy to find ways to make yourself relevant to larger stories. In the PR industry, that's called pegging. And the way I like to visualize that is there's a news story that's larger than your backyard, but there's a local connection to it. So you grab a peg, stick it in the wall, and pull yourself up by it, and therefore get to share a little piece of that spotlight. So again, we'll talk more about that as we go along, but being relevant to what's going on in the world right now is the most important and part of this, or the first step in outreach. Got to have the next slide, please, Dexter. Okay, so back to that pegging point. When there's a larger issue, how do you bring it back to your local community? And I'm open to your, if somebody wants to volunteer, tell me what the big local story is in your news market this week, or even, so far this month. Anybody have anything that leaps to mind? Okay. Well, I'll give you an example of something I did recently. Before ICE descended on Minnesota, uh, they descended on South Louisiana. In mid-December, they launched Operation Catahoula Crunch. Is what they named it. Catahoula, for if you don't know, is a type of hunting dog, and there is a Catahoula Parish in Louisiana. And the fact that they named this operation after a hunting uh, predator, essentially, really, I think, underscored what it was really all about. So they unleashed Border Patrol and ICE on South Louisiana from New Orleans to Baton Rouge with a target of arresting, they said, 5,000 uh, illegal immigrants who were, of course, violent offenders or sexual predators. Well, there aren't 5,000 violent offenders and sexual predators in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge area, even if you count natural citizens. So that was just utterly ridiculous. I think their final arrest total after 4 weeks was 350 people. And even not even all of them were hardened criminals. But when they launched this thing, I partnered with our pastor in New Orleans, Lonnie Cheremy, and I drafted a press release with quotes in it from both of us and sent it out just to Louisiana's market. That would not have been of interest elsewhere in the country or the world. What two MCC pastors from the Deep South have to say about it, uh, but it was of interest here, and that's also part of the process of just branding. Catahoula Crunch wasn't anything like it was not nearly as bad as what's happening in Minneapolis right now, but it was still very alarming. And we started doing things as a church, and New Orleans did the same to try to support our immigrant communities. Um, and again, we publicized that as a way of drawing attention to the issue and to our respective churches in South Louisiana. So there again, we took a national issue, pegged on it, and pulled ourselves up to try to get some media attention. Now that is a high profile example. Uh, there are other ways that can be done with much less impactful stories. For example, one of the big news items today, if you haven't heard, is that the police officer who was on trial for the Uvalde school shooting in Texas, police officer who was tried for not fulfilling his duties and allowing so many children to die, today was found not guilty. If we had a church in or near Uvalde, it would not be inappropriate for that church to make a comment on that. Um, or, God forbid, there was another school shooting in a relatively short time period elsewhere in the country. Any of those pastors could grab onto that story and make it local. You know, the jury found this police officer innocent. We weren't in the jury box, so we're going to let that go. But the fact that this remains in the news just underscores the importance of having better gun laws, which is consistent with UFMCC statements going back to the dawn of time, who keeps people safe, and tie it into how children were treated in the Bible. You can tie that into suffer the little children to come unto me, or I'll always say my pastor at the time really missed the boat when the Sandy Hook school shooting happened in Connecticut during Lent or during Advent. So that was a perfect opportunity to preach about the slaughter of the innocents, and bring a national event home in those sorts of ways. So you need to not only be attuned to what's happening in your community, which is of course vital, but also to national and global events so that you can try to make those connections. Sometimes too, let me tell you, and I don't in any way want to insult your intelligence, you might see a national event and feel like you need to connect to that locally. Just call me, we'll talk through it. We'll figure out a way to do that. Or uh, contrarily, you might see a local event and say, I think this has broader implications. Give me a shout. We can work on that together and figure out how to not only bring attention to the issue, but bring attention to your church and to MCC's greater mission in the country and around countries around the world.
James,
So,
you mentioned partnering, and I just wanted to chime in that it's so important that our churches partner with local organizations. And sometimes it may not be a national news or even a local news item until you make it one. For instance, if you're, just because you have a food pantry, they're not going to do a story on that. But if you're partnering with another organization that's probably larger than yours, and you're making a difference because the times are such that there's so much more demand on the food pantries, then you might be able to get a local story out of that. So sometimes it may not be necessarily in the news, but needs to be in the news. Homelessness problems, that sort of thing. If you're doing something with hospice care, with whatever your ministry might be, you might find a way to amplify that message in a way that's relevant, because people need to hear about the story. Not that people need to hear about MCC, but people need to hear about what's happening. What are you doing?
yes, good points, Rich. And I think an example I gave when we did this webinar last week is that we have a fantastic nonprofit here in Baton Rouge called Youth Oasis, that, among other things, does outreach to LGBT homeless youth, and tries to get them housed and educated and mentored and employed, and that they serve not just LGBT folks, but larger community. But they keep these kids in school, and they take in single mothers who are facing homelessness or joblessness, and help them. And so we partnered with them to do a school supply drive a couple years ago in the summer. We pushed it for a month here at church. Every week, people brought donations, and we stacked them up next to the altar so people could actually see, the fruits of what we were doing. And then several of us went to Youth Oasis, coordinated with them at their convenience, delivered these items, and did a great photo op, which we then, sent to media and were able to use on social media. So yeah, partnering with local organizations is key. I do want to mention, though, being cautious, because, for example, we have a grocery cart in our church that my flock keeps full. I mean, my folks are constantly filling it up with non-perishable food items, and some in our church rely on it. Sometimes we just have walk-ins who need it. But what we're doing is, when it gets full, we're taking about half of it to two local drop-off centers that are specifically serving immigrant communities, where families are afraid to go to work right now because they're afraid of being detained, whether they're legal or not. That this is a real fear. And there are two places in Baton Rouge now distributing food to those folks. I do not publicize that because I don't want to draw attention to those places, because that might put a target on them. So yes, we partner with them to do good things, but that's one where I choose not to make a lot of noise about it publicly, um, because the potential risk to the folks we're trying to help. Uh, so yeah, you have to be strategic. Um, and another example, one of my clients, I own a public relations firm. Um, one of my clients recently wanted to do something for Christmas, a food drive or something to give back. And my recommendation to them was, everybody's doing food drives right now. It's important, it needs to be done. But, and this client actually is a coroner's office. I said, and in Louisiana, by the way, the parish coroner is the chief medical officer for that community. So why don't we do a drive for healthcare supplies, which are very expensive, but you're not going to find at food banks. And the staff got on board with that, and we generated a whole huge pile of toothbrushes, toothpaste, feminine hygiene products, deodorant, that sort of thing. And we did a photo op with the executive director of a local nonprofit that helps homeless families and made a show of donating that to them. So those are the kind of things you can do to be different. Again, I'm a big fan of food drives. As I just said, we work with a local nonprofit on that too. But food drives are a dime a dozen these days. Doing something unique like health and hygiene products made it a little more interesting, a little more newsworthy. Um, y'all forgive me, my bifocals I need to be adjusted or something. I'm unable to read the chat without leaning into the screen. So Dexter or Rich, if you see something that I need to address, please holler. Um, okay, can we get the next slide, please, Dexter? All right, be timely. Goodness gracious, I cannot emphasize this enough. Here's another war story for you. I had a client years ago who was it was an economic development organization, and the executive director was always nagging me to generate more press releases and get them out quickly. Everything she approved everything, of course. I don't run off willy-nilly. But there was one specific issue she was really adamant about me getting this press release out about. And so she signed off on it. I sent it out. Immediately, a TV station called and wanted to interview her. This was on a Wednesday. And she said, "I'm kind of busy today. Can you ask him to come back Friday?" No, no, I can't. Because we've just, handed the story to everybody. The newspapers are going to print it, even if they don't come. And after the newspapers print it, TV doesn't want it. So if you're reaching out and saying, "Hey, attention here," be available for that to happen. And we'll talk more about that in a minute too. But a couple years ago, I had a Zoom with a board of directors, a whole church board in one of our Western states. They'd who needed some guidance. They'd gotten a media inquiry from a local reporter, and by the time they responded, they got no results from it, and they were wanting to know how they could have handled this better. So when we had our meeting, turned out this reporter had left them a voicemail and sent an email on Tuesday, and the powers that be, whoever it was, and I'm not picking on them, they didn't know any better, wanted to run everything through their board of directors before responding to make sure that everybody was on the same page. And by the time they made that happen, the reporter had, that what they had been asked about was no longer news. And so what MCC had to say about that particular local issue that the press had actually called them, which is something we crave, um, they had missed the boat. So it's really important that you be available as possible. And Dexter, next slide, please. Was there something in between?
Sorry.
That's okay. There we go. So what's the news today? If it happened last week or even yesterday, sometimes it's not news. You probably most of you have heard, read, or seen the story about Pastor Kenny being detained by ICE in Minneapolis 2 weeks ago now. And we had great success with making local, national, and international news with that story. Thanks largely to Kenny's courage, but also to Kenny's rapid communication with denomination staff so that I could get that out, quick, really fast, in a hurry. It would be pointless if I were to do a press release about that today. 2 weeks after the fact, it's no longer interesting. We used to have a saying in the news business when I worked as a journalist, there's nothing staler than yesterday's news. It's old. More things have happened since then. We have other national and international embarrassments and calamities to talk about. So once you have learned, and I'm here to help you learn how to craft that message, you can't dilly-dally. And you need to, we talked about this on Saturday as well. I personally recommend that your church bylaws say who is authorized to speak to the press. And it should be pastor and then whomever. It doesn't have to be the vice moderator next. My vice moderator is an introvert. I would not put him in front of a TV camera, but there are other people in my church that I could designate. I recommend your bylaws say pastor or his or her designee can respond to media inquiries. Now, when I do press releases for our church or when I answer media inquiries for our church, I always immediately inform my board of directors. But if I had to wait for them all to assemble or even Zoom and get on the same page with what the message was, it all would be lost. So pounce, jump, when there's the opportunity, do it. And at the bottom of this slide, there's some examples. The Pulse nightclub shooting almost 10 years ago now. I was at the time not a pastor. I was a member of our church in New Orleans, but I was at my home in Baton Rouge that weekend. I worshiped here when Pastor Keith Mazingo was here, but I got the call before church about what had happened in Orlando. And I immediately drafted a press release, emailed it to the New Orleans pastor, texted one of my friends, because I knew that pastor wouldn't check her email before worship, texted one of my friends there and said, make sure Allie checks her email and I need a response by the end of Keith's sermon. And then I went to church, and as soon as church was over here in Baton Rouge, Allison had approved the email or the press release. I emailed it out to all Louisiana media, and then I hit the road back for New Orleans. And on my way to New Orleans, I called all 4 TV stations there and said, I have a pastor of an LGBT focused church who is willing to go on camera and talk to you, give you a local angle about what just happened in Orlando. Do you want her? And all 4 of them did. So I went and picked up Pastor Allie, and we spent that day going from one interview to another, from one TV station to another, and got incredible exposure and reassurance that LGBT folks needed at that time, comfort from a clergy person, and excellent exposure for that one church and that pastor. And that one incident helped brand her as a go-to person for issues in New Orleans that related to the LGBTQ community. And thereafter, I would have reporters calling me wanting to set up an interview with her instead of the other way around. So that was an example of being very timely. If I had waited till Monday morning, that probably, that was still news in Orlando for sure. But that's another perfect example of pegging, taking a faraway story and making it your own. For the betterment of the community and good exposure for MCC. The Club Q shooting in November, what was that, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, happened on a Sunday. I was unable to reach Cecilia. So I went directly to our pastor in that community, Alicia, crafted a press release. I usually just create the quotes from whoever I'm working for at that moment. So whether it's Cecilia or a local pastor or whomever, I drafted quotes from Alicia. She had more important things to do than sit down and think of a few sentences. Texted it to her. She said, that's great. Put out the press release. And I didn't seek approval. It was a case where it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. And that had to go out then. It was vital that a queer voice from the Christian community speak up with compassion about this incredible tragedy that had just hit their community. And over the next couple of days, I did several more press releases just for that church, in addition to issuing a broader statement from Cecilia that really put a focus on the good work that MCC was doing there, and again, provided comfort. I did not bother Pastor Terry Steed when Pulse happened. She was on, that was a big deal, and Terry was on it. And Orlando is also a much bigger media market than what I was dealing with in Boulder. But Terry could have called me and I would have pounced on it too. So it's just a judgment call on my part and on yours. but I knew, Terry is very press savvy herself, so she handled that with aplomb. Any questions? Okay, next slide, please, Dexter. I mean, yes, Dexter. Sorry, folks, been a long day. Okay, be different. So, MCC already is different. So let's make our messages different. Go to the next one, please, Dexter. Um, here's a soft one. This is, again, being proactive, not breaking news, but MCC of Okefenokee will host a community concert on Saturday at 7. Refreshments will be served. You really think that's going to get any attention? But I see things like that all the time, not just from MCC, from a number of nonprofits I've worked for over the years that I've had to teach them don't do that. That's completely uh, inane. No, nobody's going to care. But move down there, and Sean Thomas. Many of you probably know Sean or know his work, and Sean's done concerts here in Baton Rouge at our church and in New Orleans. But here's another made up press release. When Sean Thomas launched his recording career 2 decades ago, he got billed as America's gay Christian. 12 CDs later, Sean is a nationally known songwriter, singer, and producer, and will bring his talents to MCC of Okefenokee on Saturday at 7. For advanced interviews or samples of his music, contact. Boom. That's a lot more interesting than come to church Saturday night. It's free. There will be juice and cookies, and we're going to sing songs. This makes it different. This makes it different than what the Episcopal Church down the road is doing with their community concerts. So, questions, comments? Okay, next slide, please. Harder one.
Excuse me, James.
Yes, ma'am.
I get what you're saying, and yeah, I have a journalism background as well, and that it seems like what you're suggesting takes more human resources than is feasible to obtain.
You mean in terms of generating and distributing press releases?
Knowing how to write press releases, getting people who pay attention. Yeah. Well,
that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole idea, is James can do that for you. And so we have this incredible resource, right? In James for our denomination. And so when James sends out a press release, you can use that press release and even just add a tag of your own on it of if you've got a local peg, what we talked about, something that makes it local, and you've already got your press release. Or if there's something you want done, contact James and he can help you.
Okay, there's one more simpler question is like the example you gave of Sean Thomas's thing. Are we going to get copies of this stuff that we can pass on to our folks when we're explaining
This
what the
this PowerPoint, you mean?
Yeah.
Sure, it's fine with me. Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all for now.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm staying tuned, Joanne. So if you have more, just holler. But I ain't no hollaback girl.
Thank you.
All right. Here's a trickier one. But we did it. It's 4 years ago now. If you can believe that Russia invaded Ukraine. Many people don't know that one of the great things our denomination did was help evacuate LGBTQ folks from the war zone into other Eastern and Central European countries. That Ukraine is not the most gay-friendly country in the world, but Russia is certainly a lot worse. And there were a lot of folks fleeing. We also helped transgender refugees get the meds they needed. And so that's something that we could easily have touched on. And it's different. It's boring as the dickens for us to issue a press release saying, shame on Russia, war is bad, we do not approve. Jesus would not have done this. Blah, blah, blah. but to say, hey, look what we're doing, and it's different from what anybody else is doing. Totally different from what anybody else is doing. That can get headlines or at least mention. And sometimes mention is all you need. On a much smaller scale, last fall, there was much gnashing of teeth over that Kim woman asking the Supreme Court to reconsider the same-sex marriage decision. And there was very real fear that SCOTUS was going to open that up again. So what I did here in Baton Rouge is I happen to have a very close friend who is a family planning lawyer, who is a lesbian, and a parent. And we've been friends 35 years. I happen to have officiated her wedding. But so we advertised, and I got her to come in here on a Saturday and put out a press release saying she was coming to talk to people about how to protect your marriage rights in the face of the possibility that they might be legally dissolved. And as a family planning lawyer, as a estate planning lawyer, she was perfectly suited to do that. To talk about wills and powers of attorney and healthcare powers of attorney and things like that. That's not a headline, but it got a mention in the press. We had decent turnout, small, but on a sunny Saturday in South Louisiana, you're competing with LSU football. It is what it is. But
James,
yes.
Sam has her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. I had a quick question, kind of going back a minute or two.
Sure.
Is there a messaging guide, some kind of resource specifically for various kind of core topics? And then also, is there something explaining to people, like everyday people, who MCC is? So not just our core values, but like those headlines, like our intention is to support individuals with these type of things. I know there's some consistency across MCC with what issues we're talking about and addressing. So I just wanted to know if there's a messaging guide or something to explain who MCC is around our values and different justice topics.
I'm going to defer to Rich or Dexter on that one.
I would say the first place is the website. If you go to the website, it's full of wonderful things that you could use, describing, for example, our mission statement, our vision, our values. I think that's basically what you're talking about there when you're trying to tell people who we are. And then, of course, each congregation is different too. So, how you want to brand your own congregation in your own market is maybe something slightly different from, what the denomination as a whole, not that it's in conflict, but just what you emphasize. So, I would encourage your local congregation to adopt its own mission statement that can be used as a tagline and put on your stationery, so that when you send these press releases, every time they see MCC Sheboygan, they see that message on the bottom of the stationery. So
can I clarify really quick? Sorry, I don't think I asked the question well. My intent, just to be clear, I'm not part of a local church here. So my intention is more to help people understand, like, when I say I'm in care with MCC, when I say I'm part of MCC, what is MCC, right? So in that way, if I say I'm doing public theologian work and MCC is consistently attached to me, helping people understand what that is, besides just it's an LGBTQ church, because I think that's just the consistent narrative. So that's why I'm thinking, like, here's kind of our stance on reproductive justice. Here's a press release that address, like, something that's more I guess specific on justice issues, but broad enough that it's like, in general, this is what we believe, because our values are clear. And I have our values on various things that I create, but I don't think the connection between our values and specific justice issues is clear. Does that
I,
make more
I
sense?
it
And
it
maybe
does.
that's
Thank
not
you.
something you do.
No, well, yes and no. And I have two answers to that. One, all of our press releases go in the resource bank, which should be accessible to you through one of those websites. Rich or Dexter can probably provide you with a direct link, and you can see every press release I've ever done in the last 5 years on various social issues, sorted by topic and headline. We've also just restarted the MCC in the news page on the website. It had been dormant for years. But they're going to start keeping that more updated with MCC in the news around the world so that you can see where we're making an impact. Now, to your other point of, how do you explain who we are? What I usually do, and I can only tell you what works for me, because like Rich said, and Dexter will back me up. I think one of the beauties of MCC is that we are each permitted and encouraged to adapt to the community in which we work. So let me tell you how I do it. First of all, I always say, well, people say who have heard of MCC or maybe know a little, say, oh, you pastor the gay church. My response is always no. I actually pastor the Christian church that welcomes and affirms gay people. And sometimes I'll even joke, depending on the tone, what is a gay church? Is that a church that dates other churches? I don't understand. But people will also ask, well, what do you believe? And I usually say, well, we have this radical theology that says God loves everybody. And that usually makes them respond with, well, that's not radical. And I usually say, sit through some church services and you'll find exactly how radical that is some places. And that can lead to a deeper discussion where I can explain. And you can also feel out, just like I do when I consult my political candidates or clients, you bond with who you're talking to, figure out which of our core values is going to resonate best with them to start with, and then you share that, and then you can snowball beyond that into wonderful things, or not, depending on how they respond to you, and that of course is beyond your control. But anyway, that's just how I message, is to try to encourage a dialogue by saying things that might be funny or might seem funny, like God loves everybody, and that's radical. That's what we believe. Does that help at all?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I appreciate the semi detour.
No problem.
And if you want guidance on any specific issue, feel free to contact myself or any of the elders or the staff, because there's probably been an MCC statement put out on that particular issue at some point. So if you can't find it, feel free to contact us, because we have been very vocal on women's rights, reproductive rights, trans rights, immigration rights, all that. So yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Is there anything else in the chat that I need to see about?
Can
No,
I jump
well,
in? Cheryl here, may I jump in?
Sure.
I just want to say that I love what you're presenting here, James. I've had the pleasure of working with James in terms of things that are happening in St. Louis, and he's been awesome. We had our 50th anniversary, for example, I guess 2 years back now, and he was able to write something up that was like 10 times better than I could have done, or probably any of us could have done. And so I'm so glad that he's that amazing resource for us here in MCC. I do want to throw out a little different twist on all this um, in terms of how do I, since I'm not clergy and I'm not authorized to speak or to create press releases or whatever. So sort of how do I navigate some of this? And I'll give you a recent example. Reverend Lauren Bennett, our lead pastor in St. Louis, put out a post on Facebook today. And some of you follow her, I think, and probably saw it. But she's talking about the big event, the rally that was held in our state capitol yesterday or the day before, and how our clergy was there. And Reverend Eli Anthony was testifying to the Congress there about trans kids and trans issues. It was a really large event and well attended. And then Lauren also mentions that she's been working with the National LGBTQ Task Force, and I'm not sure what she's referencing there. And I didn't know anything about the rally, so I'm not one to try to explain all this to you. But my question is, when I see that and I think, oh my gosh, that is so wonderful, and it's just one more example of where MCC is in the sort of a leadership role or in the forefront of a big event that's happening on current issues. And I kind of don't know how to proceed from there.
I'm not sure I understand what your question is, Cheryl. And thank you for the kind words. I've enjoyed working with you as well. But what exactly are you asking? You don't know how to proceed from there in what, like how to take what Lauren posted and try to make it news?
Yeah, I mean, I can repost it, but what else can I do? Can I call you and say, hey, look at this. Is this something that our other MCCs probably would be interested in hearing? Or is this something that's newsworthy in terms of our St. Louis press?
For starters, something like that, I would want to publicize in advance. So if Lauren or someone else at church had contacted and said, hey, we're going to be part of this, I could have publicized that in advance, provided media with contact information for Lauren during the event to try to make her more center stage, more of the star of the show, so to speak.
Yeah.
As for her Facebook post, that's something I think that should go out to the network leaders, and Dexter can facilitate that with, like you said, the suggestion of, hey, look what we did. Maybe you'd want to do it too. Rich can tell you, I've done stuff in MCC and in my secular work where I've said, this is an idea we could use. And I've sent it to the Council of Elders and staff and said, hey, here's something I've done that met with great success in a different event or different arena. I think we could use this. If you all would get on board, I'll help it make it happen. So I think your suggestion of, hey, MCC churches, look what Reverend Lauren did. Maybe you don't know James Hartman's out there and is willing to help you get more attention on things like that. Take a look. That's how best to approach that at this point.
Thank you.
Sure. Was that adequate? Did that?
Yeah, that's good. It's my struggle is that I'm hearing about it after the fact. If I'd known about it before, of course, I would have reached out to you and said, hey.
Yeah, no, you're never shy. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Be prepared. So we talked about being relevant, being timely, and being different. So where do you send it? And I bet you don't know. Bet you don't. This is the most important part of preparation. For the last 5 years, I have asked, begged, beseeched, and pleaded with local pastors and churches to send me their local media contacts so that I can add them to my database. My databases, and just for perspective, I have had clients in 9 states, Europe, and Africa. Okay. I've got good media databases. But because I work for a diversity of folks, not just MCC, my lists are all geographical. So if, which is actually very helpful when I'm publicizing something in the Quad Cities, or when I have something in Providence, Rhode Island, or Boston, it's media in that area that I can target. But so if you send me your media contacts, I just add them to my geographical lists. They don't have to be LGBT media. They can be Bubba and Skeeter's weekly news. I don't care. Send me an email address, phone number if you got it, a name if you got that too. And so that enables me to better serve you when you need help. If y'all knew Dr. Karma Amos, who was on staff with us for years, left about 4 years ago to pastor a church in Maine. Karma used to reassure me by saying, James, the trouble is they don't know they need you until they need you.
Yeah, I just want to say having that press list is so important because you don't know when somebody's going to happen in your own community. But you need it to promote the good stuff too anyway. So go ahead and start building a press release. When I first came to the Quad Cities, I started from zip. I just, went to the net and started looking up. I knew the 3 television stations. So you go to their websites, you find that they all have an email that you can send to for news. Same with the local newspapers, radio stations, and you just begin to build a list. And then you just use that list, and then you'll end up growing it over time. And some emails will change over time as they get bounced back, and you keep up with it. But it's not really that hard. And then once you have that list of emails, when you're ready with your message, you send it to yourself in blind copy. Send it to all of your press list, blind copy, and it's just they've got it.
And let me tell you another trick with that too. And thank you, Rich. You're absolutely right about all that. But like one of the New Orleans TV stations, I deal with WDSU. All of my press releases go to their assignment desk, which every TV station has one. I won't bore you with the structure of newsrooms, but and there's a generic email address that goes to their assignment desk that the assignment editor then shares with the appropriate reporters or producers, and then they contact me directly in response to my press releases. Well, I send a press release to newsdesk@wdsu.com, but I get a response from Joe Schmo at wdsu.com, who then texts me. Well, guess what? Then Joe's email address and cell number are going in my contacts too. And the next press release I send might come from Jill Smothers at wdsu.com. Aha, now I've got her. And that comes in so handy. And again, third bullet point down, God forbid, but imagine something like Pulse or Club Q happened in your city, and you say, holy crap, I need to be front and center and take a lead on this. I need to get in contact with the press, but I don't know how. Well, guess what? I don't have time to hunt that for you at that point, and neither do you. You need to be boots on the ground, not boots on the Google. And unless you've got a volunteer who can work quick, really fast in a hurry, it's unnecessarily laborious. Like when Club Q happened, I had a media list in Colorado already. Not a comprehensive one, not as comprehensive as what I have in New Orleans and Baton Rouge and other places I've done a lot of work, but enough to get the attention we needed. And that, let's go back to the Pulse shooting, where I was just doing PR for MCC New Orleans. And I said on that drive from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, which is about 70 miles, I had already sent the press release, but then I called from the car all 4 TV stations. Well, guess how I did that? I already had the numbers saved in my phone. It wouldn't have been possible or safe for me to try to do that any other way. So being prepared it's a little tedious at first, a little time consuming, but once it's done, it just builds on itself. Please tell James the email link in. I'm sorry, can somebody read me what Catherine just commented there? Okay. I'll come back to you, Catherine. I'm not ignoring you, I promise. Okay, so but you need to do this part. I have my business manager partner and I have he has a tool. I don't understand it. It's a scraper where I've said to him before, hey, Adam, get me all possible media you can in Southern California. And he'll activate this thing and it will scrape the web and give me email addresses for San Diego media contacts. It takes 8 hours and it's not always 100% accurate. So this is why I need you to do this part for me. It's chances are you have no more than 4 TV stations in your news market. Here in Baton Rouge, we only have 2. And then you probably have 1 major daily newspaper, if that. And then it's probably some smaller ones. It's not going to take you a week to track this down. And a lot of times, a lot of newspapers, especially, the reporter's email address is at the beginning or end of the story. So that the reader can respond directly to that reporter. Well, you don't have to make contact with them for me. You can just cut and paste that email address and send it to me and say, this is, reporter Schmuckatelli from the Des Moines Register. That's all I need. And he goes in my Iowa contact list. So, also, it's worth mentioning, and having been a journalist myself, and Joanne, you said you have a journalism background too. The journalism industry is top heavy with queer folks. They generally are sympathetic to the things we need to say and the information we need to share. And I'm talking from news directors to producers to on-air talent. The news media, by and large, at least in the US, is gay friendly. Matter of fact, in New Orleans and even here in Baton Rouge on occasion, on the rare occasion I stay up late enough to go out and have a drink, you'll run into the faces from the you see on the news stations in the gay bars. It's just not surprising. So you probably have these connections already or can easily build them. But please don't wait till the last minute, because like I said, you call me at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning when I'm getting ready to preach, and I'm happy to help you, but I can churn out a press release right quick, but I don't have time to dig up email addresses for you. Okay, next slide, please. Be responsive. Oh, dear heaven. Drives me bananas when, like that client I told you about earlier, says, put out this press release Wednesday morning, but then declines interviews and wants to do them 2 days later. Or the MCC church in another state that let a voicemail and an email sit unanswered for 3 days because they wanted to make sure they kissed all the right rings internally. When you don't respond, they're going to move on. They're going to find somebody else to fill your side of your part of that story, or they're just going to scrap the story altogether. One of my many jobs, I'm the political analyst for WBRZ TV. And they call me when they need comment on something. And I don't ever tell them no. I sometimes say, sorry, I'm 60 miles away. You need it in an hour. We got to do it by Zoom. But generally I can arrange it so that I can get to them, which is how they prefer it. But if I say no, either they're going to replace me with somebody who's more easily accessible, or they're going to scrap a story that their viewers really need to hear. You don't want to be the cause of that happening. When there's an opportunity for you as an MCCer to be on or in the news, preaching the good word of our work and our Savior, for that matter, if you say no, you don't want them going to the Methodist church down the street and finding a pastor there to say what you could have said better. So be responsive. Don't ignore them. Every press release I do has my cell phone number on it. In addition to my email, not my office number, my cell phone number. And if I can't always answer it, but you can text me, and I will respond to you. They know I will respond to them. That's how I've built a reputation in this field. Is I'm the go-to because they know I'll get back to them. I even have reporters and producers who have called me over the years and said, "Hey, James, we're having a really slow news day today. Can you or any of your clients drum up something that would be of interest to our viewers?" And I never say no. I never say no. You want to be that person. You want to be the person they call when they need not just a queer voice or a Christian voice, but an idea. When they need an idea to fill some airtime. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and this one too. Don't you dare send out a press release that doesn't have your contact information on the bottom of it, or I will find you and smack you in the head. Joanne, you can back me up on this. As a reporter, it was always so annoying for a press release to come in. And by the way, folks, just to be clear, press releases are not meant to be 4-page dissertations. They're supposed to be just a few paragraphs to get their attention so they want more information. But I'd sometimes get really great press releases. In the ancient times, we used fax machines, not email, with nobody to contact for follow-up on it. And you're basically, if you're not making it easy for the reporter, you're making it impossible for yourself. You've got to spoon feed them, and it's not because they're lazy. It's because the more news media has gotten corporatized in America in the last 20 years, the more staff cuts they've had. They don't have the resources they used to have, to waste time trying to find you, or to wait 2 hours for you to call them back. Number two, I already covered this. Don't send out a press release and say, but I don't want to talk about it. Then what'd you do a press release for? You just wasted everybody's time. And like I said, don't let a voicemail or email sit unanswered. Get back to folks fast. Okay, next one, please. Proactive. Very easy. The situation in Minneapolis 2 weeks ago, press, they weren't calling Kenny and me. I reached out to them. And then they started calling me. And within a matter of hours, we had Kenny booked on 3 national TV shows, cable news, to share his experience with ICE. By the next day, he was getting calls from reporters in Norway and Australia, and then the story made the news in India. But we farmed that story out. I don't know that anybody would have known outside of Kenny's Facebook orbit what had happened to him if he hadn't told us, staff and elders, so that I could jump on that and get something out as quickly as possible, in a way that got people's attention. Headline: pastor detained by ICE. That alone is attention getting. Okay, throw in the other couple details from Kenny's experience, and it was even more so. So proactive is easy. Next slide, please, Dexter. All right. Once you send your statement, assuming it's a breaking news thing, like, again, my good example of the Pulse shooting, I called them because they get 100 press releases a day or more. It's easy for yours to get lost. And I'm not talking about when you send out a press release about an upcoming garage sale. That, just let that go where it goes. The newspaper will print it where it belongs or not. Cut your losses. Don't worry about that. But when it's something really vital, something like a pastor detained by ICE, a nightclub shooting, etc., you don't have to be aggressive. Don't call and say, I demand that you interview me and give my church airtime on this issue. Just say, hey, this is Pastor McGillicuddy. Just want to make sure you got my statement earlier and that you know how to reach me. And you'll generally be talking to the assignment editor who gets all the press releases, who will be able to say, yeah, we got it. Let me just confirm this is your contact information. I've made sure the reporter has that. So that's the best you can do. At least you've done it. And that's better than risking it getting buried behind the Episcopal church up the street that just put out a 4-page press release about a garage sale. It can happen. You all have email. Emails coming in, they come in order. And if yours is first, it could slide down below things that are far less important. Give them a call. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of them. It's like I always say, I never turn down an interview. I tell all my clients, never turn down an interview unless you're truly unavailable. And don't ever say no comment.
I was just going to say, when you are interviewed, make sure that you're prepared, that you have no more than 2 or 3 points that you want to make, and you repeat those. No matter what question they throw at you, you need to come back with your 2 or 3 points. So
I'm happy to practice that with any of you.
Because remember, it's only going to be a sound bite. They're not going to usually, do 5 minutes of your speaking, right? They're going to give, 30 seconds possibly of your speaking. So make everything that you say impactful as much as possible.
Reminds me of a story, Rich. Decades ago, I'm sure you're all familiar with 60 Minutes, which used to be reputable. I used to be a big fan until I became a pastor and work every Sunday. But it's 3 segments of about 20 minutes each. And years ago, I think it was Leslie Stahl scored a huge interview with Yasser Arafat. I'm sure some of you are old enough to remember who he was. And Arafat's people said, "How long will the segment be?" Because they want a couple hours to do this. How long will the segment be? And her producer said 20 minutes, and they said, "Then Chairman Arafat will give you 20 minutes." That way, he could give her the minimum amount possible that she could edit in a way that he wouldn't have approved of. Follow me? So it goes back to what Rich was saying. Just make your points. You don't need to say 7 years ago when this church was founded, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, go become the news. And again, if you didn't hear me a minute ago, I am willing to practice those interview tips with you on the fly if needed, like I did with Pastor Kenny. Let me tell you, Pastor Kenny is shy. We did that story about him being detained by ICE. He was not looking for attention, but he knew it was a story that had to be told. But then when we started getting all those media calls, he got a little overwhelmed and called me and was like, help, what exactly do I do here? And we just did some prep on that, and then we did follow up after I watched it. And by the time that media frenzy had settled down, he was much more at ease doing it. So I'm again more than happy to spitball that with you if you want to do advanced prep or short-term prep when you're in a hurry and a crunch on a breaking news. You can almost always reach me. So don't be shy. Holler. There's my email address and my cell phone number, which I also put in the chat a few minutes ago. And I'm going to ask you now, when we are finished here in this webinar today, please send me an email with your cell number in it. Tell me who you are and where you are. That way I'm going to save your contact information so that when you ring my phone, I will answer it. Because I don't know about you, I have this feature on my phone where if the number is not saved in my contacts, it automatically goes to voicemail. And texting me is also always a good idea. I do sleep sometimes. And I am also a hospice chaplain, and when I'm with patients, I don't answer the phone. But I promise I will always get back to you as quickly as I can.
I want to say a couple of things in closing. The first is use this incredible resource that we have in James Hartman. Please send him, as he said, who you are, your cell phone, your contact information, but also send him your press list. Send him the local press list for Baton Rouge or for wherever it is that you're at. And again, if you don't have one, then it's time to make one. And the second thing I want to say is one of the reasons we're launching this series is we too often hear, well, nobody's heard of MCC. I turn that around. Have they heard of MCC in your community? Because that's your responsibility. And if they need to hear about MCC in your community. And so this is how we do that, make it happen. And this is how the denomination is trying to help you make that happen. Does that make sense?
I mean, I can only do so much without you chiming into me. Sometimes I'll see a news story and I'll reach out to you and say, hey, I think this is relevant in your community. A few years ago, for example, there was during Pride Month, somebody set somebody's pride flag on fire, and it was attached to their house, and it destroyed 2 homes. And I don't think there was loss of life, but there might have been, but there were severe injuries. I caught that on the news. I reached out to our church in Baltimore and said, hey, I think you ought to say something about this. And they said, okay, go ahead. So I crafted a press release, made up the quotes from the pastor, then said, here, would you say this? She said, sure. Put it out, and we got plenty of news exposure there and around. And one more thing too, if you are absolutely unwilling, unavailable, or just too chicken to do an interview on an important topic that cannot be avoided, I will do it for you. I've done it. I've done interviews for pastors in other cities. I've worked all over the place. So I'm not shy about doing a Zoom interview or a phone interview with a reporter in your neck of the woods. I'd rather you do it. It's better for you. It's better for MCC if you do it. But if there's a legit reason you can't, um, please don't ever feel like you have to say, no, nobody can talk to you about that. You say, I will find somebody to talk to you about that. Okay. I don't
It
want you
gets
to miss those
easier.
opportunities.
It gets
Sir?
easier too. The first time, I was interviewed for television, I was nervous and, I was scared, but it does get easier.
How do we get
Okay.
the recording of this meeting? It says the sign up here says this meeting is being recorded.
So it will be, I believe what we're planning on doing, it will either be this meeting or the other. We did this twice. So whichever one we decide is the best version of it, we will send out the link and connect.
Thank
It should
you.
also be in the resource bank as well.
The what?
The resource bank on the webpage.
Okay. Thank you.
If nothing else you take from this, please remember, I am here to support you and help you and serve you. So don't be shy. MCC doesn't pay me these millions of dollars every year just to work crossword puzzles.
Do we have other questions? Anybody have questions before we go?
I had more of like a one-on-one type, like a person, not personal, but you know what I'm saying? Question.
Sure. Shoot me a text and we'll schedule a time.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Text or email, sure. All right. Thank you all for coming. Be
Thank
safe
you.
wherever you are.
Thanks, everybody. Stay connected, stay involved. Get out there.
Thank you.
Bye,
Be
everybody.
blessed. Have a great
God
night.
bless you all.
I also wanted to share, I did an amazing program called Sacred Rights. I don't know if you've heard of it. But the focus is on like public theology and what is our responsibility as theologians to do public theology. It was like I want to say a 6-week cohort, so you have to like apply. But if there's individuals who, within MCC who would want that level of like really focused training on how do I uplift my message as a public theologian in the broader sphere. And we talked about, crafting your message. And then also we had like a whole session on safety. So how do we keep ourselves safe when doing this type of work? So I just wanted to offer that as a resource. If you know people within the denomination who want to be really outward facing as theologians.
But
That
you've got
sounds
an
like an
elder and a
incredible
staffer here.
resource.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Can you send that to me?
Yeah. Like right now, just write it in the chat or like an email.
No, I put my email and I'm better following up on email because this will disappear. Even though people like Dexter have access to it, but I don't. So
all right, let me
yeah,
get your email because I only had James's. Like I only wrote down James's, but
I
can you
just
tell
put
me
it
yours?
on there.
Oh, just now?
It's on there. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was. One of my friends from seminary told me about it, and it's kind of random who your group ends up being, obviously, because it's a cohort. But it was great. It was great from like that academic standpoint to weaving in community, which is my goal.
I think it's a fantastic resource. Thanks for offering it.
Of course. Have a
Yes.
good one, y'all. I'll
right,
send
you
you
do.
an email, James.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Okay.